The developments coming out of the Baltic are quite alarming. And Donald Trump has issued a warning of a possible World War III. Yeah, Trump's late to the party. The Pope's already warned about it. Numerous pundits have warned about it. Some have said we are already in it. I think the Pope said we're already in it. But as many of you know, if you watched my segment from yesterday, if you watched Tucker Carlson, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipeline are disabled. They're leaking and explosions were detected. I have to wonder if each explosion was placed on each pipeline. I'm not entirely sure. We don't know a whole lot about what happened, but it stands to reason that it was Western aligned interests that destroyed these pipelines, assuming there was an explosion. Now, Tucker doesn't want to go as far as to say that he is accusing Joe Biden of doing this, but many people are outright saying it on social media. Why? As Tucker points out, Joe Biden said in February, there will not be a pipeline, that they would put an end to it if Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine. And then you have, I think it's Newland, who said one way or another, there will be no pipeline. So why assume Russia did this? Well, we have this warning from Trump, which I want to get into, but we have a new warning from Truth Social. Donald Trump truthed. That's what it's called when you post messages on Truth Social. He truthed. Jack Posobiec says he's right. Trump issued this statement. Everyone is talking about the big hurricane barreling into Florida, as they should be. But perhaps a far more important event in the longer term was the announcement that the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines out of Russia, where does this has been sabotaged. This could lead to major escalation or war. I just like to point out, there's this long-winded self-congratulatory parentheses. He says, but a far more important event in the longer term was the announcement that the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines out of Russia, parentheses, which I brought to the world's attention as president when I explained how crippling reliance on it could be for Germany and other parts of Europe. Everybody laughed at the time, but they're not laughing anymore. Thanks for that interjection, former President Donald Trump. But he's right. Trump warned of possible World War III, and this interview went out well before the sabotage. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I think we got war. Tucker Carlson did such an important segment breaking down what I did not, that I thought we had to go back over this. Yesterday at 4 p.m., I did a segment on why people think it was the United States that sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, we don't know for sure, and I'll make this point. First and foremost, you need to understand this. The reason why I'm highlighting Trump's statements is that this is one of the most dramatic escalations, a direct act of sabotage on supply lines coming from Russia, their bread and butter, how they make their money, not just the one pipelines, but the one pipeline or these two Nord Stream pipelines. They have many pipelines, Gazprom, but this is a major supply line. They just completed Nord Stream 2. It hasn't even delivered gas yet, and already they've been destroyed. Some are saying they will never be operational again. I don't know. What I do know is Russia has very little reason to do this. Now, first I want to go over this, why Russia may have done it with some updated information, but I think Tucker Carlson hit the nail on the head with the hammer, why this probably was the West. And, I mean, this could be World War III. Breaking news. U.S. Embassy in Moscow tells any Americans left to leave to avoid being conscripted into Putin's army as Russians desperately try to flee. I'll give you the long story short of this. Why would Vladimir Putin destroy his own pipeline? Well, Joe Biden said they would put an end to it. So there's a prime opportunity for a false flag, which they could use to muster support for the war. They had already shut off gas to Europe. They arguably did not have that leverage if they weren't delivering gas anyway, and Europe was getting by without it. Check this out. The launch of the Baltic Pipe, one of the most important things that Tucker Carlson pointed out is that on the day that we get news that the pipeline was sabotaged, may have been, the launch of the Baltic Pipe. Check this out from Tucker. Just this quick, I want to show you this quick image.
We don't want to make that accusation.
So,
but we should tell you that maybe not coincidentally, today, a brand new pipeline was unveiled. A pipeline that carries non-Russian natural gas in roughly the same area as Nord Streams 1 and 2.
So here you can see, well, it blurs out when you pause it, but there is this yellow line coming from further in Western Europe. And then it goes into, I believe it goes into the Netherlands. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah. So let's talk about this. Vladimir Putin's got a pipeline. All right. He says we are going to shut down gas into Europe until the sanctions are lifted. On this day, they launch the Baltic Pipe, saying outright, we no longer need your gas, Putin, taking away the leverage he was hoping to have. So what does he do? I don't know, but it is a possibility that Putin then says, we'll hit our own pipe because we lost the leverage anyway. We'll then claim we were attacked, use that to rally people to fight on our behalf. I don't believe that's the most likely scenario, but I want to entertain all possibilities. I believe a strong possibility is that Vladimir Putin didn't do this. The Western forces did. And then on the same day said, we've got your alternative, Europe. You no longer need to rely on Russian natural gas. Now, Vladimir Putin desperately does need to rally troops and get people ready to fight, and they don't want to. But I don't think an attack like this would do that. I think the West had every reason to do it. And take a look at this from CNN. U.S. warned European allies this summer that Nord Stream pipelines could be attacked. Interesting. By everyone's favorite Natasha Bertrand, as well as Katie Bo Lillis. The CIA issued a warning that the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines face threats and could even be attacked. However, they say the warnings were based on U.S. intelligence assessments, but they were vague, the people said. It was not clear from the warnings who might be responsible for any attacks on the pipelines or when they might occur. The CIA declined to comment. Der Spiegel was the first to report on the intelligence warnings. On Monday, leaks were discovered in the pipelines, prompting investigation. So this you know. Hard to say, huh? I think there is a good case for Vladimir Putin having done this. Absolutely. And then I get these people, they come and they post comments and they're like, you're a deep state shill for saying that it was Russia. And it's like, oh, come on. If you believe that Russia is an innocent party in the conflict, you're just wrong. They're not. You take a look at, Luke Rudkowski pointed this out, Georgia, Chechnya. You take a look at Russia's expansion in the past and the things they want. They're not innocent here. In fact, Vladimir Putin's all around, just in my opinion, not a great guy. Not a great guy. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Russia is the great evil of the world like many of these, American politicians want to claim. My point was this. Ian said, do we just cede this territory of Ukraine to Russia and then hope there's no war? Or would that be like the appeasement of Hitler with the Sudetenland? And then I stopped, I said, okay, Ian, let me ask you, who's been expanding in Eastern Europe? And Ian said, NATO. Exactly. Now, and Luke points out correctly that Russia has expanded with, like, say, Georgia. They did take Crimea. We get it. But it's not like there's just one country doing these things right now. NATO is rapidly expanding. This is a big part of what's causing the conflict. So here we are now. And the craziest thing to me is we stand at the precipice of nuclear annihilation. And at this point, everything should be done to end the conflict. But you know what? These people are addicts. They can't stop. Tucker Carlson. What really happened to the Nord Stream pipeline? As you heard when I played that clip, he says, he doesn't want to accuse Joe Biden of having done this. But everything points to the West. Everything does. He even mentions, I think they have a picture of it. Okay, they don't. The Polish member of parliament who said, thank you, USA. He points out, Victoria Nuland, with regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies. And I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward. What does that mean? One way or another. Yeah, usually that means a very serious threat. Violence. Poland worried about Baltic pipe security after Nord Stream explosions. Well, yes, because I'll put it this way. If this really was a Western attack, and no, I shouldn't even say that. In any capacity, the Baltic pipe is now a major target. With the Nord Stream pipelines being shuttered, presumably by explosion, we don't know, but presumably, Russia's access to delivering through the Baltic has been shuttered. We're now hearing, I think, might have it here. This is breaking now this morning. European gas prices jump after Gazprom warns it could cut its last flows to Europe amid worries about apparent Nord Stream sabotage. Take a look at this. Russia's state-run energy giant Gazprom has warned it could cut flows of natural gas to Europe via Ukraine, its last link still delivering to buyers in Western Europe. Meanwhile, questions are building over Nord Stream, et cetera, et cetera. So Russia is outright saying, you know what? We're going to cut off the last bit of gas you can get. Now, that's serious. Europe may still be able to get natural gas through the Baltic pipeline. So I'll tell you this right now. The biggest target on the map in Europe is probably the Baltic Pipe project. This pipe is able to deliver natural gas from non-Russian sources. Some are saying that now Europe is dependent on fracked gas, which has to be shipped, by freighter, by cargo vessels? Insane. They're saying they're now going to be relying on fracked gas, but maybe you're going to get, frack fields somewhere else. I don't know if the UK or Western Europe can produce enough energy. But if this is delivering to Central Europe and Russia is trying to cut off gas, that threat won't do much when they're able to deliver gas via the Baltic pipe. So, of course, the big target right now will be the energy supply lines through the Baltic pipe. Russia has every reason to bomb this one. Whether or not they bombed Nord Stream 2, this is the asset for the West, and it has to be the biggest target. Now, of course, I know. I don't have access to all the information about Europe. There may be more strategic targets like military bases or something. I don't know. But cutting off a nation's energy supply is paramount in war. Let's throw back to our favorite films, Independence Day and Independence Day 2. You've seen those movies, I'd imagine. There's a funny meme about, how unrealistic it was, Independence Day. The one where the aliens come? They blow up buildings in New York. They blow up the White House. And it's the stupidest thing ever. The stupidest thing. Why would the aliens blow up the White House? Like, the White House to anyone looking from the outside is an innocuous white building. I suppose you can recognize there are people moving in and out, but if you can't understand our communications, you don't know the hierarchy or the order of things. So, but I guess you see the president and everyone's protecting him, so you can assume there's some authority there. Here's the point. There was a funny meme where they were like, the aliens would have just blown up refineries. They would have blown up power plants and substations. They wouldn't go for like a building where we make decisions. That's stupid. Make all the decisions you want. They'd blow up our energy grid. And then we are completely shut down. That's it. What are you going to do? Chop down some trees to burn wood and then make a steam generator? Good luck. They take out those power plants. You ain't building one anytime soon. The infrastructure took a long time to build, 100 years. You can't just rebuild it overnight. So when it comes to war, they're not going to go after a Capitol building. They're not going to try and storm, some government building thinking standing in the middle of it's going to give them power. They're going to go after energy, which is why we saw the Nord Stream pipeline hit in the first place. They have now destroyed I don't know who, but the opportunity for Russia to negotiate restoring energy to this section of Europe, gone. And now the only leverage lies in the hands of those in control of the Baltic pipe. And you can see right here on the side of that pipe, the European Union. What does it say? I can't read it. It's probably not even in English. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's not in English, probably in German. But you can see the EU flag. So yeah, GA2 system. Russia has every reason now to strike at the Baltic pipeline. Can they do it? I don't know. They could potentially be cutting off natural gas through their other pipelines. This ultimately is still just bad for Russia, but Russia's not in a good place as it is. Here we go, baby. Gas prices rise in Europe as fears grow Russia may halt supplies via Ukraine. Threat of sanctions from Gazprom adds to turmoil caused by damage to Nord Stream pipelines in the Baltic Sea. Our good friends over in Europe are about to face a very serious, dark winter. Heating their homes, getting access to food. But you know what? I'll say this to all the climate change, people advocating for ending climate change. Y'all are going to be celebrating because people won't be able to burn anything. So many of them will die and the planet will heal. Is that what y'all wanted? That's what we saw them celebrating before. From Newsweek, to cap it off. Joe Biden risking World War III over Taiwan, Democrat warns. This is from about just a little over a week ago. A little over a week ago, a Democrat said Joe Biden was risking World War III. Donald Trump is as well. You have seemingly both sides of the culture war or political factions in this country warning that we are marching towards World War III. We talk a lot about civil war in this country. Yes, and maybe that will happen. You know, some people think that a great tragedy would unify this country. It won't. Some people were hoping that COVID would unify the factions in this country and bring an end to the culture war. It didn't. In fact, it made it worse. Psychotic, despotic authoritarians took over and then started just locking everything down and mandating medical procedures on the public, which is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. So no unification. And now what we can see here, Tucker Carlson pointing out the obvious. Joe Biden said we'd put an end to this. Victoria Nuland said one way or another. Well, one way or another is apparently true. And what do we see on Twitter? Two trends. Tucker Carlson is trending, and Biden did. That's the quote. Biden did is trending. Or no, I'm sorry. It's did Biden. Because you have a lot of people saying, did Biden blow this up? Did Biden blow this up? Tucker Carlson is also trending because people are pointing out he's making good points, but also people are saying he's Putin's poodle, Putin's lapdog, pushing the pro-Russia narrative. If you come out and point out the obvious, you're a Putin supporter. So if World War III really does erupt and Vladimir Putin starts arming nuclear ICBMs and we say something like this needs to stop, they're going to say, you're just defending Vladimir Putin. No, I don't want to be blown up in a nuclear annihilation and then potentially, if I survive, face a nuclear holocaust. This is where we're heading. Vladimir Putin won't lose. I think it was Jordan Peterson who said it. He won't lose. He refuses to lose. He may not have the ground forces. He may be absolutely desperate in terms of his conscription. But he could always just drop nukes and say, you know what? Try me. I'm not doing it. Desperate times call for desperate measures. When someone is facing an existential threat, they will just say no. And here's what I think would happen first. Low-yield nuclear strike, perhaps nuclear artillery. What I think we'll see, what we've seen already, and it's hard to know who to trust, that with Kiev, with the Ukrainians staging a counteroffensive, pushing back the Russians, Vladimir Putin rained down incendiary bombs, shells, over a city that they had lost control of. It was a crazy sight of all these flickering white lights coming down and blanketing this city. They have more than just nukes. They have lower grade weapons, lower yield weapons, and I believe Vladimir Putin is going to slowly drive those up, saying you're not going to win. He starts with ground forces. When that doesn't work, then you go with siege weapons and eventually weapons of mass destruction. So what we might see first, nuclear artillery, howitzers, or is that what they're called? The artillery firing from long range and then just massive explosions. But we're not talking megaton bombs. We're talking maybe kiloton bombs. You start seeing thousands die in this massive nuclear barrage. If that doesn't work, or if the West responds in kind, I believe Vladimir Putin will use more tactical nuclear strikes, maybe a 100 kiloton bomb. A 100 kiloton bomb hitting Kiev would kill, I believe, 100,000 people. I believe one strike from Putin would send the Ukrainians running scared. They do not have the capability to defend against this or retaliate or strike back in any way, and Putin can and seemingly would escalate. Again, I say it a million times. Don't take my word that this is like I'm making a hard prediction like I can see the future. I believe it will start with a slow escalation. But eventually you will come to the point where there's the real risk of a legitimate, Satan missile. That's what the West calls it. It's an ICBM, and I believe it's got a yield of 50 megatons. Yeah, that would flatten all of Kiev. Every single person in the surrounding areas would be dead. Would they be able to stand up to this? And would the West be willing to counter with ICBMs of its own? They may argue we have no choice. We have to fire these nukes to shut down his nuclear capabilities. And maybe they won't target Moscow. They'll target as many nuclear sites as possible. But do they have them all? And what about the submarines? Russian submarines trawling through the seas and you have no idea where they are. Maybe they do. Maybe technology's advanced. Somebody super chatted us on IRL saying that when they were in, I think they said the Navy, obviously, that they were constantly tracking nuclear submarines, Russians, that had the ability to end the world at any moment. These nuclear missiles that rest on these subs, there are so many of them that they can just fire them off and then just pepper the eastern seaboard. And then what? Does the U.S. just sit by as they're being annihilated? They retaliate. The question is, will anyone engage to that degree? I've said before, I don't believe in mutually assured destruction. What I mean by that is, I don't think that Vladimir Putin is going to be like, I refuse to lose, nuke New York. And then America goes, they're nuking New York, fire at Moscow. And then everyone goes, and then everyone fires at the same time. It doesn't make sense. What does make sense is that Russia would nuke regions that it's attacking. The U.S. has no reason to nuke Russia directly. They may nuke Russian forces. I doubt Russia would respond by nuking New York City. But if it escalates, I guess the idea is that mutually assured destruction may occur, but it wouldn't be like war games where all the nukes are flying in the air or like G.I. Joe. It would be like a nuke, one single nuke ICBM is fired, and then you get an escalation. I don't know for sure, but I think we could be heading in that direction. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.